You just tuned in to Up for Discussion. All right, we are live here at Ultra Products with Up for Discussion. This week we've got a couple awesome guys in. We've got Canyon Clark and we've got Nate Burgess. Me and Nate have got several years of hanging out in a tree and that together. So this should be a pretty interesting discussion. Before we get started, this is episode number 8. We called it The Good Old Boys from Illinois. So I don't know why they tacked that S on there.
Well, Illinois boys don't.
Yeah.
So maybe that was a saying that came from somebody else.
For all you people that aren't from Illinois, quit doing that.
We don't say right. Illinois.
That's right.
Remember our Georgia buddies? It was like, y'all's from Illinois, right? I said, well, we're from Illinois.
Yeah.
And we're Ewans, not y'all's.
That's right. That's right. So this week, we've got the guys from Ridge Hunter Outdoors, and we're pretty excited about that. If you guys get a chance, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share, do it all. We appreciate it. And not only that, but it'll kind of keep you guys in the loop. We appreciate everybody who's tuning in right now. Looky there, Jarrett's on. He's not only running things on the backside, but he's also watching it as well.
He's a double agent. He's on and on.
He's a dedicated fan. So
he's a groupie.
There we go.
Just joking.
So we've been changing things up, trying to polish things. This evening, it went a little clunky to start out, but we're here. So
it's rolling now.
That's right. So we just want to thank you guys for coming on right off the bat. We appreciate it.
Yep. And, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I was going to say, he knows you well enough to not call you awesome. But me, I don't know. Like, I don't know if he knows me well enough to know that's not true. But I figured he knew you well enough to not say you were an awesome guy. But we'll roll with it.
You say a couple awesome guys.
Yeah. Fantastic fellas.
Fantastic.
Yeah. We can roll with that.
Yeah.
For sure.
That works.
We could give a rundown, because I don't know Canyon. I just know you now, I guess, when I see you, but have some history with Nate. What's your connection
with Nate?
Well, with both of them.
With Canyon, I know him from school, and not only that, but also know his wife. And beyond that, I've taken some deer to Clark's to have them processed over the years.
Yep.
So
when you say from school, from when you
a lot of people don't realize that I used to be an educator.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Quasi. So,
yep.
And,
I remember Wes subbing several times.
Yeah.
And taking pictures too, of course.
Yeah. I went to school to get my degree in education, and then I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. So, and really subbing is what killed that for me, because I did that for a few years and I was like, these people are nuts. So
that's a good way to find out whether you're going to like it or not.
Yeah.
It really is.
What about Mr. Nate?
I've known Nate. Golly.
Did it start through church probably?
Yeah.
Church. Yeah. Youth group.
Yep. Years ago. Like, golly.
15 years.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
I mean, Nate,
maybe I remember even longer.
Dude, I remember you. Oh, it's been longer. I remember you when you were like probably 8 or 9.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's like 23 years.
Yeah. Back when Orchardville Church was still in the infant stage.
Yeah.
And
whippersnapper Nate.
Oh man.
Yep.
Yeah. So
it's been a long time.
It has been.
And I met Nate, I guess, through Team Harvest, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still remember, I think the first time I took you, and I think you were going to run camera for me.
That's even been a day or two ago.
Yeah, that was, I'm thinking of the particular tree and a particular setup.
Was it a fence row?
I don't think it was, but I remember there wasn't enough stuff on the side of the tree for you. You're like, I need more than that to get in that tree.
Hey, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
But it was a very common occurrence with me because
Ooh.
tree steps are far apart and few between. When
Yeah.
Did you have to pull him up, or?
I think we got in the tree.
We did. Yeah.
I think we got in the tree.
It was a miracle. I remember that now.
It was a miracle.
If
Miracles do happen.
If you were 100 pounds heavier, you would have way more steps than you use right now. I promise.
He gives me that crap all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
and I remember like there was a limb that the TV tower or something was sitting on.
Yeah, so
but the limb was just above head high, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that's right. We cut pieces of it, didn't we?
No, I had a piece of TV tower, and I want to get all I can get out of that. You know, be all that you can be.
So you started at a bunch.
So I
up.
took it up the tree, and fastened it and hung the top of the TV tower piece. Was using it like a climbing stick.
Yeah.
There, I cut a limb off and hooked it on that, and then fastened it.
Mm-hmm.
So the base of the tower was up here, close to your head, and I don't think I had anything underneath of it. So you
for those listening or watching at home,
you kind of had to do a swing in the saddle, grab, pull, and then get locked in, and then it was easy from there.
It was solid, yeah. once you made that limb, you had to get on that limb, and that's where I was struggling big time.
For those listening at home, we don't condone that.
No,
That's a different time.
It was, yeah.
I remember the stand up there too. As a climber that was attached to the tree, but it was just like a little hand climber, section, and you had a bicycle chain around it up there, around the tree. Like it was a chain, but it was a bicycle chain.
So say that again, because I was reading Doug's nonsense,
was,
calling me monkey boy on the.
It was Lathan had no trouble getting in that stand.
He doesn't.
But yeah, that camera stand. It was a climbing stand, but you had it set in there good. But the seat was a bicycle chain around the seat there, and you had it snugged up good. But I mean, I looked at that and I was like, I've never sat on anything like that. But it was a chain. It was a chain. It was solid.
That's funny.
And that was
I have so many of those stories when I take people. Wes is probably a few of them, but Wes adapted and overcame.
I did. I knew that I had to, otherwise I was going to die. So.
I think
not much choice. Right?
I think it all happened though. I think it happened because I was a kid. I hunted by myself. I didn't have no money to run by steps or whatever, and I was like, "We're going to stretch this,"
Yeah,
and maybe Doug's right. There's a little bit of monkey.
I remember
monkey or something
when we first started. Literally, all we were doing was driving nails in the tree, and that was how we got up.
Yeah, you go to Kincaid's or some hardware store and buy those great big nails,
great big long
drive them in a tree.
Lathan come out holding them up. We got some.
Right.
Yeah. We skipped McDonald's that day. So.
Used to even run big lags in trees.
Yeah.
Take a ratchet.
Yeah. We got a picture today of an old one that like Dad and Jeff have told us about who knows how many times. Where they take a TV tower, just run it up to the top, and then just put a piece of plywood on top of it, little dog chain around the tree, and that was it. And he's talking about, man, that still looks pretty good. I think I'll just put a new floor in it and use it for next year. Or you could put a ladder stand up there.
They've come up with some pretty awesome stuff.
Yeah,
they're called stands now.
Right, exactly. I mean,
we used to.
I'm all for recycling, but
yeah, I mean, that's how you started though. When I started, it was like build them in, treated lumber, whatever you could find, and
if you could find a tree that had enough limbs in it to where you didn't need steps,
right?
Gold.
Build it in there.
Yeah,
I even took 2x12s and cut V's on each end and just wedged them in the crotch of a tree and stood on a 2x12.
Yeah.
Don't do this at home.
Yeah, that's just the history of how things started.
Really is.
There's better ways now, for sure.
Yeah,
some of that stuff was not out there 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there's always been stands, but it was a big deal then, even just to build your own stand. If it was a lock on, you got conduit, you got something, bent it, welded it.
I've got this thing at the house because when we bought this place, I was like, I've got to keep that.
Yeah.
And what it is it's called the pocket stand. And it's a board that they cut in the middle and put a hinge on it so it folds in half. And on each end, it has a notch. So you can get up in the tree where there's a Y, unfold it,
and it snaps
lock in,
Mm-hmm.
and die.
Because in those days, hardly anybody wore a safety harness.
Oh, yeah.
either.
Yeah.
It was like, you know,
Right.
we were just tougher back then, I think.
They were real
People didn't die as
believers.
easy back then.
All right,
That's probably
so
true.
let's dive into what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
Tell us about that.
So it actually started just selling scent. Like I had the stuff at the shop to do it with.
Yeah.
And tarsal gland scent. Basically stuff that we were just throwing away because it's not good for anything. So I think it was like, I was in college, so I was 17, 18, somewhere in there. Started selling that and came up with the name Ridge Hunter. And so I did that for a couple years. I graduated college in 19. I went to work for the Blues in spring of 20.
No kidding. I didn't know
So
that.
3 days after my orientation with them, the world shut down for COVID in 2020, right? So I came back here. We had a house bought in St. Peters, Missouri, like over there by St. Louis, everything.
So say that again. I went to work for the Blues,
Mm-hmm.
like the hockey Blues.
Yep. I was going to work for them.
He was a blues musician.
Yeah, down in Memphis. Took a saxophone.
So don't
a little
go too
case.
deep into that, but maybe what are you going to do for the Blues?
Blues,
Like,
I was going to be on
slick
their
the ice up for 'em?
no,
Zamboni
part of their
man.
Zamboni driver.
marketing and
Really?
basically like hockey. I'm trying to think of the words they use, but basically going out into the community and promoting the sport of hockey kind of position,
Yeah.
Cool.
doing
That's
that kind of
sweet.
stuff. So yeah, it would have been great. But again, 3 days after I had my first day, the world shuts down.
Right.
So we came back over here and didn't do much like everybody else for a couple months.
Yeah.
And it was July of that year. Like, I could do something with Ridge Hunter probably. So I decided we would start doing some management work like food plots and stuff and some consulting stuff. Because
Yeah.
I knew Jeff and Dad both would be good help with that. And that's kind of where we started that. And I guess it was 21, somewhere in August of 21, after we'd done that for about a year. We go on these consultations and we talk to people, and everybody's got the same questions, or they're doing the same stuff that they really probably should be doing a little differently, or
Yeah.
whether that's hunting stuff or habitat stuff, right? And I was like, we ought to just start a podcast, and then we could answer people's questions on a podcast.
Yeah.
So I hit Nate up because we'd been going to church together for, I don't know, ever 10 years probably at that time. And I asked if he'd be interested in doing it. She's like, yeah, I'd be for that. So we started, me and him, in September, I think, of that year of 21. And it started out, we were just doing that. It was like strategy stuff, habitat management stuff, things we thought people needed to know, or would be beneficial to people. And then it kind of morphed into, we had Steve Shirk was our first guest on. He's a writer for North American Whitetail out in Pennsylvania. Big woods, public land guy, like knows his stuff, right?
Yeah.
We had him on. The reception of that episode was great. So we're like, we need to get more guests on. We started slowly getting more and more people, and it's kind of evolved into what it is now, which is more of just similar to what you guys are doing. Sit down, bring people in, talk to them about hunting in general, and then I wanted to keep some of what it started as, but I just moved it to what I'm calling Full Draw Friday. The episodes, we've been doing those for a little over a year, I guess.
Yeah, I saw where you broke it up. That's pretty cool.
So the most of those are like 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes on a long one. That more strategy or habitat management stuff. And then that way, the Monday regular episode, we can just sit down and talk with people.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the origin of where it started and where it's at now. I think we just did episode 116. I think was the last one we put up. So
man, that's dedication.
We've missed a few, but
yeah,
I've tried to keep it pretty consistent.
So when you missed a few, did you skip a number?
No, no, we went right back. I probably should have, because we were at episode 52 and it was like, I don't know, October, November of the following year.
Yeah.
Should have been September, right? But yeah, I try to be as consistent as possible because, like I have podcasts I like to listen to, and like if it doesn't come out the day that it should, I'm like, man, where's the show at? You know, people kind of like, you forget about it or whatever, you miss one. So even if it's not like the greatest, best episode, which I hate doing them by myself, but I'll do it sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it's like me talking to a wall.
Yeah.
It's like, I forget words and there's no one there to help me, you know? And, but I'll put them up. At least there's something. No, we don't do it. All of ours is pre-recorded right now.
Pre-recorded.
Yep.
Yeah.
we were talking a little bit before. Like, I would like to do a little bit of live stuff, especially
if you could do it live.
when
it
we
would
go to
probably
shows.
make it. Well, you can look at stuff like this and see people.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gives
Like,
you some-
I like the interaction
we do
you
have some people that are kind of knuckleheads. Somebody chimed in and says that sounds grand, Canyon. So
clever. I've never heard that one before.
I bet not.
So I was just talking about graduating college. When you, of course, you got all kinds of crazy names, right? So they give you this little card and they're like, name and how you pronounce it. Like, they want you to spell it out or whatever. And I just put Canyon Clark, and under the bottom for how you pronounce it, I put like the grand. that was all that was on my card.
Yeah.
So I got it right.
That's awesome.
Nice. Yep. Well, that's so the blues thing after COVID, that was like.
So I went back and we did an event in St. Charles. It was hotter than all get out. We had a tent set up similar to like a deer show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we did that. And then that was the one day after everything shut down that I went back and worked for them. I think it might have been like the following August, like in 21. It was somewhere in the summer of 21. Then they decided they would mandate the vaccine, and whatever anybody's thoughts are on that, I was like, I'm not going to get it.
Yeah.
I just, at the time where we were at, having kids, stuff like that, didn't feel like getting it. So they were like, you can respond to this email and say you're going to get it, whatever. We need proof of vaccination for you to come back to work for us. If you don't respond or if you don't get it, we'll just take it as you leaving. So I sent them an email. I was like, hey, I'm not quitting. I'm not resigning my position, but I'm also not getting the shot. So,
yeah.
I mean, effectively, I guess I was fired, but
I don't do well with mandates.
Yeah. I'm the same way.
Know.
I'm the
I
same
guess
way.
it depends what it is. If you mandated me to eat a Subway sandwich right now, I probably would be okay with that.
Yeah.
I might not, just because you told me to. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I have a little bit of that. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's the redneck in
Yeah.
me, but it's like you tell me to do something, I might not, even though just because
I don't know.
me to
There's
do
a
it.
fine line there, like knowing when to be like,
Right.
yep.
It depends on from whom's comes the mandate.
It
Yes.
does. It does.
Yep.
You know, what I
If
mean?
it's coming out of love, you can receive it.
Oh,
that and,
When it's come from the St. Louis Blues,
yeah. Right.
yeah.
It's a little different.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I mean, for sure. I mean, you get a mandate from the Lord, you're like, all right,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'll go after.
I
You
can
get a-
receive
You
that.
get a mandate from your parents many times. I mean, you honor you generally don't have a problem with that.
Right.
There's something about the government telling you what to do, right? You're like,
Yeah.
It rubs a lot of
your
people like us
track
the wrong way, I
record-
think.
If they had a better track record, maybe.
Right.
That's the thing. It's like,
And I don't want to turn it into that sort of show, but if
Yeah.
it was, if
I didn't
it
mean to
was-
go down that road.
Yeah.
oh man,
Yeah.
that's
Here we
a
are.
hole.
It's a
Yeah.
cavernous,
Yeah, not a road.
it's a
really.
cavernous ravine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
It's a
but-
canyon.
Yeah. There you go. Tie it all back together.
That's right.
Without all that stuff, we wouldn't be here doing the podcast with you guys doing
Yeah.
Ridge Hunter. So
Yeah,
I mean,
cool.
everything happens for a reason.
So
That's
it's
to some
right.
extent.
so it's you got scent that you do.
Yep.
What
You guys
else
have got
is there?
seed.
Yeah, we do a little bit of seed. So with the consulting and management part, and then I'll talk about the scent in a second. But like obviously, we're putting in food plots for guys. It makes sense to have our own seed blend that we could sell them, get them
Sure,
a little bit of better
right.
price on it. So I was looking at different options for doing that. We came out with the clover and chicory blend that we like, and then I was just trying to find somebody who had like a good blend of stuff that's you're not wasting your money on, not just filler seed that's got good germination rates and things of
Right.
that nature.
Yeah.
So I came across Grandpa Ray Outdoors, and they had pretty much every blend that I had in my mind that I was going to do anyway.
Yeah.
At least something really close, right? And it was, again, good seed, not a lot of inert matter. Germination rates were good. The guy knows what he's doing. I talked to him personally, and I started using his seed through like all the clients that we had. I just get his seed and use it. So we did the clover and chicory blend. Now we're partnered with him on the podcast too.
Yeah.
So
I've heard that.
if something happens there, I know there's been some talk about what he's doing with the business. So if he ever decides to get out of it, we might pursue that a little farther.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where it stopped for now because we found something that was already there or existing that was good. But with the scent,
So has he developed a seed for you?
No,
Like, is it Ridge
not a-
Hunter seed at this point, or is
no, he doesn't. We don't have a specific blend through him.
Okay.
The only one that's a Ridge Hunter blend is our own, the clover chicory. It's got a little bit of alfalfa in it. There's two types of white clovers, and then the alfalfa and the chicory.
So what's filler? I mean, you say not a lot.
You
of
turn
fill
around
there.
the back of the seed bag, and you can see all the they have to put what's in that bag.
Right.
A lot of them you'll see like 20% inert matter. Like that would be coating, stuff like that would be filler in the bag to make it seem like you get more seed. Also, a big one is like sugar beets, which is kind of a buzzword. They're great, but you have to have so many of them, so many seeds, like per pound or whatever. Like you have to have so many in your food plot for them to be worth it. So guys throw in sugar beets. They put in like almost the fewest amount possible. So you're not really getting the benefit of having them in there. But since they're in there, they can charge you more money because it says sugar beets on the package. That would be like filler seeds. And a lot of times also they have blends that like one thing should really be planted probably either in the spring or you're talking like early in the fall planting season. And another thing should probably be planted towards, back into September, even some stuff in October. They throw them all in the same blend and it doesn't work well together. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for. And like I said, at the Crap Parade, they got a lot of good blends.
I never thought about filler. I mean, taking up space basically, right in the bag.
Well, that's why I was looking for them, because you go to Walmart and you pull something off a shelf and you turn it around, and then even germination rate. Like if you got something that's like a 60% germination rate, 40% of the seed in the bag is not even going to do anything.
Yeah.
And that's at the time that they tested it. So if it's been on the Walmart shelf for a year and a half,
and that's another thing that I don't think a lot of guys realize is that the longer it sits on the shelf, the lower that germination rate goes.
Yeah. So now if you're paying a little bit more money per pound for like the seed that we use, you're still getting more seed for your money versus 40% germination rate in a cheaper bag.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So anyway, and on the scent thing, it kind of just made sense. Like I said, we were throwing all, like when you process a deer, for anybody that doesn't know, obviously you take all the good stuff out and then you have like the hide, the head, the hoofs, that kind of stuff that you can't use for anything necessarily. And we just throw it in the dumpster and get rid of it.
Indians would argue with you.
Right. Nowadays, since we have hammers and, screwdrivers and things
I'm
like that.
sorry. Native Americans would argue with you.
Let's be politically correct.
Yeah.
I don't want to get you guys in trouble. So we were throwing all that stuff away. Well, I'd always used like tarsal glands as a drag rag, basically. Like I'd put a hole in them and tie a rope through it and then throw it out. I thought there's got to be a better way. And I'd seen some people were doing some tarsal sprays. So essentially, I kind of developed my own way of getting the scent out of them. I do cut it with water because number one, it makes it go a lot farther. Yeah. And number two, that stuff is really strong.
Yeah, it's massively strong.
Yeah. So I started doing that, and I sell as much of it as I make, but I never get enough time to make as much of it as I want. You know what I mean? I wish I had more time to put into that, because I think it would do really well, and it did really well the first couple of years, and that's kind of what I was doing. But I haven't had as much time the last few years as everything else.
Have you considered just selling the tarsals?
I've thought about it. I don't know. The thing with that is the shelf life on them and stuff like that.
And I'm not sure what the legality of it.
Yeah,
that is.
You get into the wild game stuff.
There's a gray area there that I'm sure.
Because like with the meat, wild game meat, you're not supposed to sell that.
Yeah.
I don't know on the parts and all that.
Yeah, but a hide, I know that they can sell the hides.
Right.
So
I would assume that would be similar to that, because some people leave the glands on the hides.
Yeah.
Which we don't, because the guys that we sell the hides to don't want them. But
if anybody's listening and they know the answer to that,
chime in.
Chime in, or keep it to yourself. So
Rob, our friend Rob asked if that stuff was available here. It is not, I guess, right?
It is not, but you can get it in Wayne City. It's a short drive.
Yep.
So,
and we got it on our website too, which it's not available now because I mix it all through the season. That way it's fresh.
Yeah.
And I don't keep it year over year either.
Yeah.
So, but like
during the season, pretty tedious or strenuous or time consuming process, or
the worst part of it
stinks for a while.
Right. The worst part of it's actually getting the stuff off the deer.
So after he makes a big batch, it's good just to have him with you, probably.
Yeah. Sit on that tree and be quiet.
I try to make a batch the day I'm going to go out.
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing we used to do. There was always deer in the back of the shop. It's like I'd put my hunting clothes on and go back there and like look like a bear on a scratching post, cover scent, right?
Hey, that's got to work. So.
Yeah, I never got attacked, fortunately.
Can't
but
beat the real thing, right?
That's right.
Man, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's where it all.
Nate, how do you fall into all this?
He asked me if I wanted to be on that podcast.
Okay.
You had said you'd watched the Team Harvest videos like growing up,
Mhm.
you know, and you're like, you've had some experience in this stuff, and I was like, it's minimal. Like I was so young when you guys were doing. Team
what he
Harvest,
said was,
like,
yeah, I basically ran the joint, but
Like,
If it had not
Lathan
been
and West
for
didn't know what
Nate,
they were doing without me. That's what he said.
we didn't. And it's-
we had no idea.
Yeah,
You
we
didn't know
just-
what you were doing with him.
Yeah, I guess that's
Yeah.
that's
he
he made us better.
I just showed up and I had a blast, you know. But yeah, he said, you want to come on a podcast? I was like, sure. I said, I'm not going to attract any attention for you, but like, I'll sit there and we'll talk.
Yeah.
You know? And he's kept me around.
Have you tried to talk him into selling DVDs yet?
I have not.
Man, we pawned a lot of those things off. So,
Yep.
yeah.
I
That's
actually
cool.
had the orange one, the first one,
Yeah.
and then the one with Righty on the cover, the second one. I
Yeah.
have those 2 DVDs to this day. And funny enough, when I was in high school, I wanted to make hunting DVDs because I knew you guys did it. I'm like, it's obviously possible to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
I was like,
It's,
we need to make this happen.
Highly lucrative.
Yeah, well, that's what I'd always heard.
Yeah.
You can sink a bunch of money into it and then sell them for pennies and
If you want to lose your shirt,
Start
start making
That's a good way to
DVDs.
do it.
and not
every
pay for the gas that
Mhm.
gets you to the place that you got to sell them.
Mhm.
and at this point, every day that goes by, they become a little less relevant.
Yeah. So
Yeah, right.
if you're listening and you're thinking about getting into the DVD market,
That
might
ship's long
reconsider.
sailed.
yeah, you may need to talk to your kids.
Yeah.
They'll tell you that DVDs are gone,
Yeah,
basically.
the reason I asked him in the first place, I give him a hard time, which we all kind of do that. It's fun to have the guys around because it is kind of a little bit of a locker room feel,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
and we can give each other crap and everybody knows to just take it and move on.
Yeah.
Only one of us really kind of gets upset about it every now and then. But I knew that
He
from
knows
talking
who
to,
he is, right?
I knew from talking to Nate at church and like we're always talking hunting and stuff that we were on the same page with
Yeah.
like what we thought was, I don't want to say the right way to do things, but the way that we like to do stuff,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you know, and both open-minded about different ways to do stuff as well. So I thought he would be a great guy to bring on and talk because he knows his stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
that's kind of why I asked him in the first place, which shows how little I knew about him at the time.
So tell me how things go with the consulting then.
Okay, so it started out like I just doing Facebook marketing to try to get the name out there, right? And we were going to, and we did the management stuff first. Actually, was our first job. So we went to like Oklahoma and Eastern Kentucky and down to almost Tennessee doing
No
management
kidding.
work, hauling the tractor around,
Yeah.
which sucked, but it was getting the name out there.
Yeah.
And that rolled into some consultations. And essentially, what we do is, if a guy's got a piece of property that he just really doesn't know what to do with,
Yeah.
or maybe he's got an idea, but he wants to make sure it's going to be the best, then, I mean, we talk to him. I have a phone conversation with him, make sure everybody's on the same page, like what they want to do, kind of get their goals for the property, because everybody wants different stuff out of what
Yeah.
they have, and then get the lay of the land. We'll all sit down and go over like aerials of the property and stuff and be like, hey, I want to look at this for sure, especially depending on the size of the property, because it's hard to see everything when you're talking 80, 100, 140 acres.
Right.
But we'll say, we for sure want to see this or whatever on the aerial map. And then we go actually we walk the property with them, right? And we see what we want to see. And sometimes I've been surprised about how accurate we've been on the aerial maps of like how we thought stuff laid out and how we
Yeah.
thought stuff would work or should work. And other times it's like completely different. So we go walk it with them. We talk to them a little more. And then basically we come up with a wildlife / habitat management plan for them.
Okay.
And then we send that to them with maps and notes and all that kind of stuff. And one thing, kind of part of the reason we ended up doing the podcast, was we were talking to guys as much about hunting strategy as what they were actually doing as far as habitat goes. Like we would get a lot more questions or ask a lot more questions to them and like teach, for lack of a better word, like
Yeah.
maybe some of the stuff that they could be doing better, like just hunting wise, like how they're hunting the property, not necessarily even what they're doing with the habitat. So that's kind of why we started the podcast. But yeah, we do a lot of that. We talk a lot about, entry and exit routes. And
a lot of people don't have any strategy on any of that.
No, and it's better than it used to be. Like, 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, it was like, hey, I got my day off. I'm going to go hunting today. I'm going to go sit my best stand.
Yeah.
Didn't think about anything else.
Yeah.
I think now guys they're thinking about the wind.
They're wising up to some degree.
They're thinking about how they're getting there and how they're getting out. But there's still a lot of stuff that's missed. Like a lot of guys that we talk to are, my wind's really good for this stand. Well, okay, there's a bedding area over to your east, and that west wind that you're walking in on is blowing all your scent over that bedding area before you get there. That's why you're not seeing any deer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's stuff like that is a lot of what we get into on the consultations, but then obviously the habitat stuff as well. But kind of what I always tell people is you can be a habitat manager all year long. You can only really manage your wildlife and manage your deer from like October to January. So like we need to nail this down, because anybody can have great habitat, but you're not going to affect necessarily your deer herd or the structure of it outside of October to January, because that's when you get to decide what deer live to the next year. Whether you want to shoot them or don't shoot them, you can manage your doe to buck ratio, stuff like that.
And that's when it's the most important for them to be on your property.
Exactly.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
That's always kind of been my philosophy is, and maybe if I had 5,000 acres, I would worry about like summer habitat and fawning and food for throughout the year. But two things is, if I had that much, I still would probably make it all great for them to be on from October to January, because again, that's when I can hunt them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's around here, especially in most areas where whitetails live. Now you get down to eastern Kentucky and Tennessee, it's a little different, but throughout the summer, there's so much available for them anyway.
How does that change the way you think?
What do you mean?
Because different places, it's different.
Oh, you mean like throughout the
like
whitetail
what you-
range? There's so many different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What you plant,
Yep.
what the deer are doing
Mhm.
at certain times of the year,
Yep.
all that changes. So
Oh yeah.
does your mindset have to change whenever you're going into these areas?
Yes.
And if it does, how did you determine what your mindset was on that?
So we always kind of go in with the idea that deer are deer, right? So they're going to have certain similarities, but like
Yeah.
you're saying, the farther south you go, the later in the year the rut generally is, because the closer to the equator, the sunlight and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Also, if you go like out to Oklahoma, where we were doing management work at, you're not planting corn and beans out there.
Yeah.
Like it's as hard as this table, the dirt is. So you might get some clover to grow out there, and that's what they want. And then you also have to think about like their natural browse that's already available or that isn't. And you have to start taking that stuff into consideration, because here, for example, you could do a clear cut in a patch of timber that's, 80 years old or whatever, that doesn't have anything head level for the deer. And you're going to have a considerable amount of browse for them through a good part of October and not even have to plant anything. Well, out there, if you do a clear cut, maybe you get some cedars grow back.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing that they're really browsing on. So it changes a lot of what you can do habitat wise, but then that has to change what you do hunting wise, because you have to be more focused in on what they want to do naturally, like their natural movements, funnels, ridge tops, saddles, and stuff like that.
Sure.
Natural bedding areas for them, for example. And then even that changes, because if you find a good, pine thicket around here or cedar thicket, pretty good chance deer might be bedding in it. Out in Oklahoma and a lot of parts of Arkansas, there's cedars and pines all over the place. It's just another, it's just another place for them.
Yeah.
Right.
So you don't come across that and like score.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not like you would here.
Yeah.
So it definitely changes. And that's changed the way you even think about hunting around here. I think it's made me a better hunter going out and doing that stuff. And like talking to guys like Steve, who hunts public land, big woods in Pennsylvania, you talk to him and pick his brain about what he's doing. Well, even though I can do food plots and stuff, I've got permission properties. I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty limited on what I can do. So I got to figure out different ways to get on that property and kill a deer. I can use what these guys are telling me, like what he's doing out there in Pennsylvania, what we're looking at down in Tennessee,
That's an interesting aspect that I never thought about.
Mhm.
So you have guys that don't own the ground, but they have permission to be on it, and they ask you where
Yep.
the best stand locations and stuff like that are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
And that's why we focus as much on like the hunting part of it as we do the habitat part. And again, you can have the greatest habitat in the world, but if you're not hunting it right, you're not going to have deer.
Yeah.
And then you're not going to have the deer herd you want, because you're not going to have the opportunity to pass that deer or shoot that deer or shoot those does or let them walk, you know?
So how do you tell someone that they don't know what they think they know?
Very gently.
Yeah.
And we've had some guys that aren't real receptive to it. It can be a grind with some people
Yeah.
because they are so set in what they think they know. And you just kind of have to keep picking away at them. And there's some people that, and you know this from anything, and I'm sure even from preaching, there's some people you can't get through.
Yeah.
Like you still try, right? But in a business, like whereas maybe in the church, you're like, you know, there's no point where you're going to stop trying to get through to them. If you're running a business, at some point you just got to
Be like, peace out.
exactly
Yeah.
send them the stuff that should help make them successful and say, hey, I'm here if you need me. But yeah, you just kind of got to drop it. But it's showing them examples of where it has worked, you know, that
Yeah.
usually helps if you can bring up examples of stuff that we've done in the past, like, hey, look, this guy was in a similar situation to you. This is what we did for him. It worked here. I think it could work for you too. I know you've been doing it this way for 50 years. You also only have 2 deer on the wall. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like this guy's killed 2 deer
So
in
how
the
many
last 2
guys are
years.
involved in that business?
To the full-time extent, just me.
Okay.
However, Nate will help like with especially the pre-planning stuff. I'm all the time trying to get him to go walk properties with me, but he's
Yeah.
always busy. He's got his own full-time job. You know, Dad and Jeff help with it
those
too.
full-time
I know.
jobs.
They'll go walk properties with me and do stuff like that. So it's a 4-man team basically.
Yeah.
That helps at some point or another. But
That's interesting.
Pretty neat.
it's
man.
fun.
I mean, what have you had? I guess so. How many years have you been into that? You say since
That was I started that in 2020.
2020.
So this will be our 4th year.
So
We're
4
about
years
3.5
in.
years now.
4 years in, do you get like text messages or calls and be like, man, it's happening. It worked, or
Yeah, which is and
testimonials, I guess. Is
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
some people will go to, and I'm all the time telling them like, hey, if you need anything after we leave, just you got my number, text
Yeah.
me, call me, whatever. If you need us to come back out and look at something, if you got questions, because when you set something up, it's what you think is going to work, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as you change something, it's going to change what the deer do, and you might have to shift a little bit, which is what I try to tell guys too. Like that's why I'll give general areas for where we think a good stand might be, but I've kind of gotten away from you need to put a stand in this tree, because then they put a stand in that tree. Well, the deer are 60 yards over that way and they never move,
Yeah.
you know? But yeah, we have guys that'll come back and say, hey, you know, from a year ago or 2 years ago, we're seeing better deer on the property. One guy that we did a consultation with last year, they saw more better deer. They had a target buck show up on the property and then he got hit on the highway. So it was like, we got to hunt him for a while. We could see the benefits of what's going on, just
Yeah.
bad luck on that
Yeah.
part of it. But yeah, we've got guys that have killed deer on properties we worked on, which is, that's a cool thing too. It's fulfilling, I guess,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word,
For
to know
sure.
that what you're doing is helping people.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask a loaded question. What's
Nate?
what's like the number one thing you're like, this is the number one thing I do to help somebody? Is it food? Is it hinge cutting properties? Is it pushing out something or bringing in something? Like, what's the number one?
I
Like
would
if someone's
say,
listening and they're like, I want the number one thing that will help me
it's
kill
definitely the
bigger deer.
it's definitely the strategy part.
The strategy.
Yep. Because and different properties will have
Because some
different
people
things
would
that you need
say,
to do.
I'm sure there's people who say, oh no, it's the food.
Oh,
If you
food would
can-
be a lot of what
'cause
you
if
hear
they're
a
not
lot.
there, no matter how good your
And the reason
strategy
for that is 'cause
and I'm
it's-
not questioning you, I'm just
Oh,
saying
yeah.
that's what people are going to say.
Yep. I think the reason for that is because as soon as you put food in, if there's not food available in that area, you're going to draw a deer.
Yeah.
You know, if you put something in that they like, that they're going
Mhm.
to come eat it. So it's an easy food is like a quick fix too.
Yeah.
And you can ruin a good farm by going in. The first thing you do is putting on food, because then you're bringing in all these does, all these extra deer that are going to stay. And then if you're trying to make other habitat improvements after that, well, go try to plant a grove of oak trees after you've moved in 20 new deer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It ain't going to happen. So there's plenty of times where we'll recommend guys putting in new food, like first thing. But other times it's, hey, maybe do this first and get your bedding area set and then go that. But as far as like the number one thing, it's definitely strategy. And a lot of that has to do with Like, I think the biggest thing that we consistently see guys messing up is their entry and exit routes. And part of that's the wind, because they're
Right.
only thinking about the wind when they get to the stand. They're not thinking about it when they're going in or coming out. And then another part of it is they're going in and coming out the same way, no matter if it's morning or evening. So if you're going in the morning, you don't want to be walking through food. If you're coming out in the morning, you don't want to be walking through bedding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
In the evening, flip-flopped. You don't want to walk through bedding in the evening to get your stand. You don't want to walk through food on the way out, because you're going to blow the deer out that you're hopefully going to see and have a chance at. I think that's the biggest thing. I don't
So
know if
strategies
that's
number
kind
one.
of what
What do
you
you
think.
think, Nate? Strategies number one.
That's a lot of times guys just aren't thinking through, as much as we like to think that we are. I hate bumping deer. I'm going to go a long ways out of my way to make sure that I don't, and
Right.
I've got a couple of really good spots that I want to be in something fierce. I just can't, because you can't get there.
Yeah.
And it's not worth blowing them all out to get to that spot. I'm gonna stay back, and not go to that spot if I can't get there.
A lot of guys struggle with that.
It kills me, but it's not worth it. It's not worth it to me. But I would say it depends on what you got. Like you hear on TV all the time, you need food.
Yeah.
Well, they can sell you food. All these guys, food plot stuff, they got it, and they're like, we can get you that. You need it. We can sell it to you. Yeah. You can't sell habitat near as easy, And in this part of the world, I think we've got you can't find very many places in this part of the world that are lacking in food. This time of the year, maybe so, because they've ate everything. But when we're hunting them, there's stuff for them to eat everywhere.
Yeah.
I want to beef up everything I can on my place for bedding. I want to have the most bedding. I want to have dynamite bedding. I want to have better bedding than anybody else, within a mile. So that's my goal right now.
The greatest betting ever.
Like that.
That's a terrible Donald Trump. I failed.
Yeah.
It's hard to put like one thing on it too, like say,
because you got to have it all. You want to have it all.
And in my opinion, you have to be the best at something in your neighborhood, especially if you're talking like 10, 20 acres.
That was kind of my next thing, because I mean,
try to figure out what your neighbors have.
So tough.
And what they're lacking.
So tough for many people that are hunting 10 to 20 acres. I mean,
you've got the one spot that's
my best farm's 10 acres.
Yeah. And I'm not saying they're not good, but and we had a guy on here that's what he does, and he's like, man, there's things you can do with 10 acres to make it better. And of course, Wes said corn piles is what he thought.
For sure.
And we,
depending on what state you're
and
in.
we reiterate here in Illinois, we don't use corn piles, and I'm not against them, I guess, if it's legal, but it's not here. So we're totally joking when we say that.
Of course.
But what do you do, with 10 and 15 acres? And then you've got guys that are hunting 15 acres or 20 acres that they don't own.
Right.
So it's not like they can just go in there and be like, well, I'm going to hinge cut this whole end.
Yeah.
And I'm going to create a 5-acre circle here that deer are going to want to bed in, and I can creep up to the other side of it. They're not going to know I'm there when the wind's right, and I can hunt them that way because there's food behind me.
Right.
I guess, how does that guy be strategic?
That's the one where,
because they're not going to call you.
Right.
Well, they may call you to walk their property and be like, where would you hunt?
Right.
But they're not going to call you to come in and be like, well, put me in 4.5, 5 acres of food here. Because for one, they can't, or they have to approach a landowner. And if it's
iffy anyway.
Yeah, it's iffy on that. And he's like, well, you asked me if you want to hunt. Now you're wanting to go down there and plant such and such and cut 10 trees, and that's a good way to lose that spot to start with. So I guess because to me at that point, strategies I would think would be different, would it not be?
Yeah, it'd have to be. And even on the property that I got that I can do stuff on, I think the biggest thing is not overhunting it. Because when you're talking about those smaller properties, if you hunt that thing 3 times in a week, like, you're taking a pretty good chance. Every time you go in there, you're leaving something.
Sure.
Even if you don't get busted when you're in the stand on the way in, on the way out, they might catch your scent going in or going out after you're gone. You know, where you walked in or walked out, they might catch your scent. When it comes to the strategy on the smaller properties, I think the biggest thing is patience, going in on the best days. And then there's other cases where, yeah, maybe the only property you got to hunt, if it's only 10 or 15 acres, you can't do anything to make it better. The neighbor's got a great place. It might just not be a good place to hunt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
You can still give yourself the best chance to catch that buck when he comes through there the one time, you know? But, and that's another thing.
With all that you've done on the 10-acre piece over there at the cabin, how many different bucks did you have in there this year that you were wanting to shoot?
5 or 6.
Yeah, on 10 acres.
And last year was better than that as far as quality of deer, but like mature, and on 10 acres, I'm calling mature deer 4.5 plus.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something too, that mature deer is all relative, right? Like there's parts of Michigan where mature deer is 3.5 years old, like 2.5 in some places. But for me, like 4.5-year-old deer on that property, I would shoot, and 5 or 6 of them. But if you can't do anything with the property, again, it's really strategy. And then I think you got to capitalize on where, if you can manage a property, if you have a bigger property you can manage, you have more chances because you're opening that up. Now, if you do it right, October through January, if you only have that 10 or 15 acres that you just got permission on, you can't do anything with it. Maybe November 1st through November 20th is the time you really got to capitalize on it. You know, you got to
that's
take
what I was going to be. So
take advantage of the
biggest part
randomness.
of that guy that's listening or girl. Their biggest part of their strategy is play your cards right, and then be there in the rut
when you need to be.
Yeah, because when the rut's on, it some of everything we talk about goes out the door to some degree.
And in that situation, you know, if that's your best chance, you can be a little more risky. Like if you just have an iffy wind, you might have to go in there and try them if it's that time of year. If you only got 2 weeks to kill the deer you're after because of the situation you're in on that small piece that you got to get it done during the rut, like you might have to take a little more chances than like you would on your home farm there, where you still know you're going to have a good chance at them in December.
Yeah. I'd just like to throw this out. We appreciate everybody who's watching online. There's been several questions, one pertaining to water sources. And do you guys create water sources, or do you, how do you leverage that aspect of it?
That's a big thing we were talking about. Again, right back to knowing what your neighbors have and what they don't have. If there's no water nearby and you can create a water source, it's going to be a good attraction for them.
Yeah.
And that's the way I kind of look at water, as an attractant. So like food plot is an attractive thing to them. Bedding area to some extent is an attractive thing to them, and water can be an attractive thing. So we will like create water sources. I know Nate's got a spot where he's thinking about doing one this year, and we'll
especially
recommend
with as dry as it was this year.
We'll recommend it for clients.
Now, when you say a water source, are you talking like a sprinkler out in the field?
Yeah,
most of the time, like
run a hose out there.
when we're putting them in a consultation,
500 foot of hose run back here.
That's right. Well, when we're recommending it, it's like even like the size of the table, you know, as long as it's deep enough to hold some water, you know, throw a tarp in it or something.
Yeah.
Maybe a stick so the coons can get out so they don't get in there and die and rot in the water.
Yeah.
But, and when you're doing that, I think you can leverage the being able to hunt over it too. Because something on a lot of guys do habitat improvements. One thing you got to keep in mind is it's making it better for the deer, but how is it also making it easier for me to hunt? Because if it makes it better for the deer, but it doesn't make it any easier for you to hunt it,
yeah,
you're probably not going to be any
I've
more
got a
successful.
question about like I've seen where people put little miniature koi pond things, bury them and things like that. Is there any legality on that?
I don't think so.
No. There's nothing with, you know,
and if you're listening and you know, let us know.
Yeah,
or
well,
no.
I mean, because I don't. Yeah, because I don't know. I'm thinking, you know, I know we can't bait.
Yeah.
And that, you know, in this state anyway.
Right.
And you know, I almost hate to say that too loud, I guess, now that I'm thinking about it. Maybe you should just hush. Why'd you even ask such a silly question? I was just wondering. I don't know.
Right.
I don't think there probably isn't.
I mean, I've got a spot on me. It's where they had drilled a well at one point, and I mean, it's probably, I bet it's 5 foot wide and about 12 foot long, and the deer frequent it.
Oh yeah.
And
And
so
it's just a little water hole. You're
it's
saying
not big at
Old
all.
cattle
It never
ponds.
dries up.
Yeah.
But I
It
think
never
it's
dries up.
no. I think it's really deep.
Have you ever dove into it?
I haven't.
Feet first.
That's
Garrett?
right. We don't dive.
Job for him.
I need to
Yeah.
investigate that. Don't do it by yourself. Make sure there's someone
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
What-
Journey to the center of the earth.
Could be a portal into a new dimension or something on your property.
When we are doing the water stuff, though, like where I said it's kind of an attraction thing, you can do it sometimes if you have to, but like if you can separate your water source from your food plot, or maybe put a little watering hole in next to a travel corridor to give them even more reason to come through there. That's just, if you put that water source right by your food plot, okay, well now you've used two attractants right here together.
That's a nice shed.
It is nice. Where you could, it won't be after I knock it off the table, where you could separate those, and now you have two different spots where the deer, where you could potentially hunt them.
Yeah.
And you can hunt in between them.
Yeah, you're right.
Catch them on their travel from one to the other.
Yep.
They
So-
got to have both.
In your consultations, there's not a size that you're like, because I don't know if you guys watched last week. We have Kevin Boyer on from Elite Land Management, and he was basically the mindset: it doesn't matter if it's small or large. We'll kind of give you, the rundown on what we think on it.
Yeah.
Do you guys have that same take, or?
Yeah, because guys only have what they have. There's a certain amount of people who could buy more property tomorrow if they wanted to.
Yeah.
But most guys are, what they got's what they got. They got it from family. Maybe they went out and they saved up and they bought 40 acres and that's it. That's what they're going to have. I feel like there's always something you can do to make it more attractive. Again, location is like any other real estate. So if it's in a bad spot, you can still do everything great. Maybe it still might not be where you're killing mature buck on there every year, and that's something you have to keep in mind as far as your expectations, which we talk to guys about a lot, is knowing what to expect, setting them realistically. So if you have 10 acres and it's not in the best spot in the world, you probably shouldn't be thinking, man, I'm either going to kill 200-inch deer on this every other year, or it's a failure. You know what I mean? Maybe it's, I'm going to kill a 4.5-year-old buck on here every couple years.
Yeah.
And that's a success for that property. So I think you can be successful on any size property. And in my mind, there's always stuff you can do to improve it. But at the same time, successful to one guy shouldn't always be the same as another guy.
I agree. That's good.
Yeah.
You don't hear that one very often.
You don't.
Everybody needs to kill a 200-inch deer.
Everybody who's listening needs to get a hold of that, because I feel like I'm fed up with them cramming down our throats what somebody on TV kills. That should be the standard for everybody.
Yep.
And even, well, it probably derives from there, but it's trickled down to the guys like us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's trickled even down to the kids.
Yeah.
To where it's like these kids that are just starting hunting, they feel like, well, they've got to kill a 150 or a 160.
Yeah.
How about you kill a spike?
Exactly.
And be
But
proud of
deer,
it.
Yep.
You know, kill a deer first. Go kill a deer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be people that hear me say, go kill a spike and be proud of it.
They'll be aggravated.
And they're
They'll be mad
ruffling
about
up
it.
right
They're
now.
frustrated.
Yep.
Actually, yeah.
The only people
Maybe they need to go kill a spike.
right.
I'm gonna start. I'm thinking about having a season where I just kill nothing but a couple 4-pointers
There
or
you
something.
go.
Just take pictures of them, hold them little fellers up.
And that's what it is.
Give
It's,
them the thumbs
it's
up.
the social media.
Put them on your
right?
shoulders.
Like everybody sees all these. If you go scroll through my Instagram in October, November, it looks like everybody's killing 170-inch deer, right? But it's a select number of people out of all of us that are hunting, and then there are guys that have opportunities that the rest of us don't have.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
I think it's all about finding, and at the same time, I think I want to applaud maturity as you grow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I think it's a natural process.
That's not my, that's not the trophy that it used to be for me.
Exactly.
And that's a good thing too.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I hate the mindset of, well, I can't believe that kid, or that guy who just started is shooting that, or
Yes.
I honestly, I don't even care if the guy's been hunting 20 years.
I was gonna
If
say,
it
because
makes him happy,
there's even a
good for you,
realm.
man.
There's
Yep.
even a realm of guys that they just want to shoot something when it comes by.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I go back.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
If you go back to the beginnings when you started, and maybe everybody was better than me. Maybe they didn't shoot yearlings.
Just me.
Maybe we heard that story already. Go back to what episode was that? Last week, week 4. But I remember, like, you go with your grandpa, and grandpa shot the first thing that come by.
Mm-hmm.
He had 2 tags. He didn't bow hunt. I'm thinking of shotgun season here 30 years ago. You know, he got in his stand. If 2 deer came by and he got them both before they got away, that's what he got that season. And that's what he wanted. If he killed a nice buck, it's because that's the first one that come by.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that's all he ever wanted. And there's people out there that way.
Yeah.
They've been hunting 20 years. I mean, Grandpa was hunting far before I ever started hunting, you know.
Yeah.
And he was out there to get a deer.
Yep. That's why I think it's whatever makes that hunter happy, that's what you should shoot. And the rest of us as hunters should be happy for them. Because we got enough enemies outside of our own group that we don't really need to be tearing each other down.
That's exactly right.
There's enough of that coming from the outside.
And everybody can listen to this and be like, I agree, until your neighbor shoots, you know, a 2-year-old.
Yeah. And then you're the guy.
And you'll be the one, if you don't watch it, that's like, oh, I can't believe he shot that.
That was my good 2-year-old.
I mean, that's a 10.2-year-old. That's already got an 18-inch spread. I guarantee in 3 or 4 years, I'm going to. And the next 10 years, that deer was really going to turn into something.
Right. But that was my deer. You know what I mean? Like, that's what people say. It's my deer. I got this deer. Like, it's not your deer just because he's on your property, you know?
Yeah.
It's everybody's.
And I'm not talking about maybe I'm not talking about saying, well, man, I wish that could have made it to 4.
Well, the only people
that's fine,
you know, but it crosses over into almost casting judgment on a person, you know. And even if that person has told you 1,000 times, I'm going to shoot, man, I'm holding out for a 160, you know, I'm going to shoot this 160, I'm waiting. And then he shoots a 2.5-year-old 10-pointer that potentially could have turned into something really incredible.
If he's happy with it.
The thing is, it's probably the reason he's saying I'm holding out for a 160 is because of the oblong standard that's been set for everybody.
Yeah.
And we live in the golden age of whitetails.
Oh yeah.
You know, when monster bucks came out, like, you guys weren't even born probably when the first episode of Monster Bucks came out, and the average on monster bucks was 125 to 130. That was the score. The average score was 125 to 130. Every once in a while, some rifle hunter that went to Saskatchewan come out there with a 160, and we were like, this is monster buck, you know, and it's freakazoid, and now that's nothing. So we live kind of in that golden age where I think, you know, states have jumped on board and limited. You know, we can kill 2. Some states can only kill 1.
Illinois really dropped the ball on that, though, I feel like.
Yeah.
Well, what do they do to fix that, though? Just let us kill 1 buck?
I miss check-in stations.
Yeah, well, I would say, that. But most states don't have physical check-in stations now.
Right.
Man,
I think you look at what Iowa's done as a model for what a state could do.
Yeah.
And I have talked about this a couple times, but it was maybe in December.
Oh no.
Well, what is that?
So I did a full draw. Was it a full draw fighter or a regular episode? Anyway, I did an episode where it was one of them by myself. Oh, this would be interesting to talk about. What would happen if now that we have crossbows that are legal all year, which I have no problem with. If you want to hunt with a crossbow, hunt with a crossbow.
See, I do. But like, as a shop owner, I have a problem with an entire season.
Yeah.
That it's a, you know.
Well,
to me, there's a difference
with
between
equipment.
archery.
With equipment, and we're not hating on the crossbow.
No, not at all.
But it's equipment that almost supersedes what slug guns could do.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
And people are going to be, nope, it ain't shooting 1,200 feet a second. No, but 1,200 feet a second ain't worth squat if you can't hit nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you can shoot a 5,000 feet a second if you can't hit nothing with it, because the old slug guns, a lot of us were using Foster slugs and slick barrels.
So my issue is less with the crossbow itself and more with the time.
Yeah.
Like, that's where I struggle with.
So that's where, like, with the crossbow season now, also our gun season is right smack dab in the middle when deer really should be locked down and breeding.
Yeah.
So now, not only have we exponentially increased the amount of deer that are being killed during bow season, we've also still have the gun season where And again, there's those guys that they're killing the first deer that come by. Well, what's the first deer that comes by in the middle of November? It's a 2.5, 3.5-year-old buck, right?
Yeah.
And those deer are still getting killed. People are still killing a whole bunch of does right there in the middle of November. So I think eventually that will hurt our age class as much as anything.
I think it already has.
Yeah, something
I agree.
what I talked about on the
The
episode.
crossbow or the gun season?
I think it's a combination.
A
Combination.
Yeah.
So what
Do
I
you
kind of talked
think-
about
do you
was
think, I don't want to blow you off that one too far, but do you think if you took gun season, took it out of lockdown, moved it to some other place?
that was the whole episode.
Because I can see that what can be a issue is you're not letting your mature deer breed like they should.
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
exactly his suggestion.
Yeah.
How was that episode received?
Well,
Tons of publicity.
yeah.
Uh,
I had people tell me that like they agreed, they thought that was a great idea, but the vast majority of people on Facebook, the ones that are going to comment, are the ones that are going to be negative. And you thought I'd have shot their dog.
So you're talking about their comment, and tell me what they're commenting on. The fact that you
That I wanted. My
entertain moving the
suggestion
gun
was
season, or
we potentially move the gun season from the middle of November to first week of December. So just go first Friday through Sunday and run it 10 days straight. So guys that can't necessarily hunt the weekends in the other season, they got a chance to hunt through the week.
yeah,
You
We're
can still
picking
kill
some
big
fights
deer in
here. You
December.
guys know it, really.
You know,
There's some people that are
would fight.
going to be torqued.
the people were torqued
Yeah.
that I recommended that.
Yeah.
But I think, and I laid it all out in that episode where with the crossbows, with the amount of deer that are still being killed during gun season, I don't know how many late-born fawns that I've seen. And I got to think part of that has to do with the fact that our gun season's right in the middle of lockdown when they should be breeding does. So that pushes back their breeding cycle, which pushes back their gestation. Now we have younger fawns. And then
You
it's
think
just
that- you think
That's
so?
an
cycling from
area
there.
that a lot of people don't realize. You get a firsthand look
Oh, yeah.
at where the progression is.
We get
Because
more
because
than
of-
anybody else.
because of the processing.
Because they're
So he's
processing,
seeing the
yeah.
physical deer that come in.
we can get a pretty good idea of the general population, right?
Yeah.
And the age class.
So
at least
someone
what's
who's
being
chiming
killed.
in who wants to talk on top of you about that, they don't know jack squat compared to what you know.
Well, I wouldn't
Just
say
it.
that.
Just
but-
say it.
I wouldn't say that.
Maybe not squat jack, but maybe jack. You said jack squat.
Jack squat.
Maybe squat jack.
Squat
Yeah,
jack.
they-
All
yeah.
right.
They
Say
might.
it backwards sometimes. It confuses.
But I got
people.
Nate backing me up, and I know nobody knows more than he does about it. So
That's right.
and I can prove it.
You know, here's a question, because it seems like to me, in the last 20 years, seems like to me that bucks are running around with their both sides on a lot longer. They don't
Mhm.
shed off as soon.
Mhm.
That can stem from a doe being in way later than
Longer.
They're
Yeah.
still testosterone is still
Yeah,
sure.
at a higher level.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, what little I know, science says that when the last doe goes out, and then he leaves that even thought, you know, he knows.
Yeah,
I
the
haven't-
testosterone
Yeah,
level
and the
drops, and
testosterone
because of
starts
it-
to dip, and it hits a certain place, and then they shed off. Which is why you get wounded deer that shed off early, because they fell out of the breeding because they got wounded bad enough. They couldn't chase,
Yeah.
they couldn't do their thing out there, so their testosterone level drops. They lose their horns, because it seems like there's and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are going to be like, someone could say, "Oh, you're so wrong. They're all dropping off right now." But it seems like to me, I mean, I'm 30 some years in. You know, I've walked. Picked up sheds, hunted. It seems like to me there's a lot of deer out there that carry both sides longer.
They do.
Yeah. Based on my trail cameras the past even 3-4 years, I would say the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's
And
something where, like you're talking about, the late born fawns, when they're able to breed, is not necessarily their age, but they say it's when they hit a certain body weight. So if that fawn is born later than normal, now she's hitting that body weight, let's say in January, into January, February, she might be able to breed that January or February, or the bucks are still going to try to breed her, you know? So that adds to the stress of your bucks too.
Yeah.
And that goes to buck to doe ratio even. Like there's a whole lot of places you could go with that, but like you're talking about having, let's say you got 3 does to 1 buck. Well, now each buck's trying to breed 3 does instead of his rut being 2-3 weeks, getting those does bred and then being out. Now he's trying to breed does from November to the end of January. He's stressed. He's still holding his antlers.
Right.
He doesn't have as much time to regrow them. He's got a lot more stress on his body, so he's lost more body weight. So now he has to eat more to make up for his body weight. So the excess is not going to his antlers. Like, it's a snowball effect that all that stuff plays in that you don't really think
That's
about.
what I do too. I've got to eat more to make up for
it. You fill that beard out if you,
That's
if you
right.
hit the right body weight, it'd go into that beard.
Yeah.
I have to work on that.
I mean, it's all just none of it is probably been proven.
Right.
You know, there's
You
nothing,
can only speculate to a certain point, right?
to a certain point, you know, but
without testing, you know.
Yeah.
Right. It'd be one of those deals, and you can't ever do things for one season. You'd have to do what? You'd have to do
multiple.
You'd have to look at something like 8 seasons, probably.
Yeah.
Because I always think if we consider a buck somewhat mature at 4.5 years old, so if you did 8, you're looking at 2 generations of maturity.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you got into the 8th year and all of a sudden you're like, Illinois is off the Richter scale of a better deer herd, healthier, there's more mature bucks and all those things like that. And now we don't have deer running around in April with both antlers on,
right?
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I've seen them carry them way late into March.
Though. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, we
sure.
were looking for sheds one time and jumped a deer, and it's been a few years ago, but I'm like, there he is.
Yeah.
I mean, those should be off there. We jumped him. I was like, he's got both sides still on.
I had a deer on camera last year, like 3rd week of March. He ended up getting killed this season, but both sides still on, looked real sick. I didn't even know if he was going to make it. Like, I thought this deer will be dead. I won't see him next year. Well, this year he showed up on camera. He looked like a giant at 4.5. He ended up getting killed, and he went, I believe, low 140s. 140,
but
low
his body
140s.
weight was down. Is that why?
His body weight was down. So he looked huge on camera.
Yeah.
He never regained the body weight. He didn't make that big a jump with his antlers, and he was still carrying 3rd week of March.
I mean, people don't realize that trauma, which malnutrition and running yourself almost to death could be considered trauma, or a bad wound, you know. And I have a different outtake on that when because Doug runs enough cameras to know when he showed us that picture, and I bring it up to people. I mean, we're talking a good buck.
Yeah, it was at least upper 50s, and maybe.
And was he just more of an 8 or a big 8? Or Doug, if you're still on here, put it in the comments. But he takes a bad wound.
Frame.
I've talked so much, no one's listening anymore.
Yeah, he took a bad wound. Somebody hit him, right?
Man, it looked like someone. Honestly, what it looked like is a rage cut him all the way across the back.
Yeah, he went.
Laid
him wide open. So he takes a bad wound that apparently he lives through, but took him, a long time. So traumatized his system to get over it. And the next year,
dude, he looked like.
I mean, I've killed yearling 6-pointers that were bigger.
Yeah,
really.
And you're almost argued to the fact that's not that deer.
Except he had a scar on his back that was the exact same spot.
Right. You're like, that can't be him, but he's got the mark.
Do you know what he did? I don't know how long ago this was, but you know what he did the next year?
The next year he was better.
Okay.
And then the next year he was better. And before it was all said and done, he made a pretty good deer again. But
he was like 9.
He was 9.
9 years old before he turned into a good buck again.
So
when I say good buck, you know what I mean?
Yeah, solid deer.
Yeah. He was probably in the 140s maybe by the time he made a decent buck again.
Turned into one that when you see him, you're like, oh, there's a good one, that type of thing.
You were talking about doing studies and stuff, and I'm not going political. I'm just as an example. If you look at like political surveys and stuff, and it says one thing and then it ends up being way off, and you go back and you look, okay, well, this survey was done in New York City, New York.
Yeah.
There's probably a reason it was to a certain demographic, right? Deer studies the same way. Like, sometimes you have to go look at where the deer are being studied or for how long and things like that. But there was a deer, and this was a pin deer to an extent, right? It was like the best they could do to keep it wild while keeping it contained. So big open space, but they still had high fence on it. In my mind, the best they could do without, trying to catch a wild deer again.
Yeah.
And it got bit by a rattlesnake, and at like 3.5, I think it was. And it was 130 some inch deer. So really solid 3.5-year-old
Right,
buck. Got bit
right.
by a rattlesnake. They thought it was going to die. It ended up dropping those antlers, coming back and healing. And after it healed, so at 4.5, because it made a pretty quick recovery, really, and it had like ate the whole flank off of this deer. It was nasty.
No kidding.
It came back. Well, it shocked its system so much that after it got healthy soon enough that its system was still really on overdrive, basically, and it ended up being 160, high 160s, low 170s 4-year-old from that injury that it recovered from. It sent its body into overdrive, and all that excess after its body healed went to its antlers. The following year at 5.5, it was 140 something inch deer again.
No kidding.
Yeah, that was a.
So it was kind of.
I don't know if that was Missouri, the MSU Deer Lab, but QDMA is the one that had put the
kind
research
of like
out.
It's like his
Spider-Man.
system overcompensated. Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
He
Yeah.
grew. You say he got bit by a rattlesnake,
Mhm.
so he grew
Grew
fangs,
fangs.
and he became poisonous.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't
man.
know. I have to be careful because I don't gun hunt, and I'm fine with people that love gun hunting. I don't,
sure.
You know, I mean, if that's what you love and that's what you want to do, that's fine. I personally I have gun hunted, and not that I never will again.
Right.
That it just don't turn the crank for me.
Mhm.
And if I'm gonna have 2 bucks, I just assume 2 bucks with a bow. You know, if I can get it done, and sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't.
Right.
But
Here's one thing I would like to see. I'd like to see the state do a scenario where you get your first buck tag. In order to get your second one, you got to kill a doe.
Yeah.
Like, because I think our numbers are a little askew.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, it might bring things back into alignment where it needs to be.
Yeah. And that's where you'd have to go back to check stations. And even then, you're going to have some people that there will be no more dead deer alongside the road, right? Because they're just going to throw them in the back of the truck and say, here's my doe. But I think
but that works out for you guys because you get a butcher,
right? That's something that the state could do.
Yeah.
And here's kind of where I'm at on it. I think the state could help us a bunch, and they don't. Because of that, the guys who do have ground that they can manage or that do hunt, if you can do the best you can to make it the best habitat for the deer, to help them as much as you can, as a responsible conservationist, I think we have to take it more upon ourselves than maybe someone does in Iowa, even though if you talk to the guys from up there, a lot of them are on the same page, and there's a lot of guys around here that are on the same page. And that's why I think we're in the golden age of the whitetail, because there is so much more management that's going on, and guys are.
That's what I was meaning when I was, because there's people are doing things, and people are passing up deer.
Right.
There's a lot of there are pluses to the mindset that it has to be 5.5, 6 years old. I mean, obviously you get more mature, they get bigger.
And honestly, the guys, and again, whatever you want to shoot, like we talk about that all the time. If it makes you happy, shoot it. The only guys I like question, or like if they're talking to me, I might say something to them, is they shoot 2.5 or 3.5-year-old deer every year, but then they're complaining about not having any 4.5 and 5.5-year-old deer on their property.
I mean,
it's those guys that you got to be like, if you're not happy with them, don't shoot them.
Yeah, I think with everybody, you have to evaluate what's your standard and what are you looking to achieve in order to make that property better.
Yep.
And if your standard doesn't match making the property better, those things need to come into alignment.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're never going to see the deer that you want to see.
Yep.
Do you think if the state changed some things without anything else, that would be one of the biggest things?
I think what the state needs to change is about, I don't know, south of Chicago, they need to cut it off.
But I mean, like,
bring that a little further south even.
I mean, like with all the management, everything that's out there that's making it better. If there was just one of those laws come in motion,
that's Iowa.
That would be the bigger,
right?
Yeah.
Because I was kind of overshadowed Illinois when at one time, Illinois overshadowed Iowa as far as being.
They have the combination now of the state and the landowner mindset, right? The guys that do own private.
What did they change though? What did Iowa? So what's the rule? You get 1 buck.
They're kind of weird on their tags. There's a lot. You can shoot 1 buck generally, like out of state guys have to draw.
Too specific.
You get 1 buck tag. If you own property, you can have a buck tag for a certain landowner size. you can get a bow tag, and I believe you can get at least one firearm permit. So the max you could have is 3 if you own property, if you get a firearm tag, and if you have a bow tag, the way I understand it. And I might be butchering that completely, but I know the max you can get is 3. Most guys only end up with 1.
I think their out-of-state system is a lot better.
I think we could benefit from that too.
Yeah.
But and I think Patrick Halbert said that. He said issue less out of stater tags, but
The government only sees that as income.
that's money.
And here's-
They want to sell all the out-of-state tags they can.
Sure.
That's their mindset.
Sure.
Here's where I would like to talk to somebody who's in a position to make those decisions, because
Well,
And
let's,
I'm not one
let's
of those-
assume that JB's listening.
okay, well,
T-
let's just
tell him
assume-
what you think.
He's probably not after you guys had Darren Bailey on,
What up, homie?
but you sit down
If
and
you're
talk
listening,
to him.
JB, come down, be on the podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
Here.
We'll
talk to
have you on.
Yeah.
Might be pleasant for some of us. So.
Right? I'm not one of the guys that like hates the out-of-state guys.
Yeah.
I don't like the guys who are non-ethical or are doing things the wrong way in general. I don't care where you're from. You know what I mean? Like that, I have a problem with that. But out-of-state guys in general, a lot of them that we have as customers at the shop are are a lot better than some of the in-state guys coming from Chicago. But I digress from that. I think if I could talk to somebody about it, you look at the way our deer herd is now, and these guys are paying $400 for a tag and then some, plus their license, to come up from Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi to come up and hunt,
Yeah.
because we're the closest big buck state you can draw, or you can buy an over-the-counter tag,
Yes.
right? If we continue to do things the way we're doing, I could see a world where instead of, let's just call it, our average age class is 3.5 years old, 135-inch deer. Now our average age class, because we've kept the crossbow season all year, we've kept the gun season in the middle, all these things that we've talked about. Now our average age class is 2.5, and our average size is at 125. Why is a guy going to come up from Georgia, pay $500 for his tags and license, plus a hotel, plus food, plus gas, where he could shoot a 125-inch deer in his backyard, almost no matter where he's at? You know what I mean?
Right.
Your argument is valid.
I don't think they look at it that way, though, because it's like you're saying, they only see the dollars that are right in
Yeah.
front of
Yeah.
them.
If
Right
you
now.
go back to Iowa, do you know what their rules are with crossbows and guns?
They don't have crossbows are not considered archery equipment right now. And their gun season, they have an early firearm season in October. I think it's a weekend, maybe. It might be 5 days. And then they have bow season all the way till December. And their next firearm season is in December. So you can bow hunt all through basically October and November until December rolls around, and then they have their muzzleloader seasons in December.
So I'm assuming the only way. So you're saying the only way somebody crossbow hunts in Iowa is because they probably let a disabled person.
I think that's a
Mhm.
possibility, correct?
if
I
they have
think.
if they, if
Yeah,
they,
like it used to be.
It used
here.
to be here. Yeah,
Yeah.
you had a get a doctor's slip or something if
Yeah.
you got a blowed out rotator cuff.
And I think there's benefits to people being able to use crossbows, because it does open it up to a wider range of people who can bow hunt.
Sure.
I do think you have to do something to offset the amount of deer that are being killed.
That's the thing.
I also think that, and maybe not everybody has the same mindset, but if it gets a guy into hunting because he can go out there and use a crossbow, hopefully with what we're putting out on both of our podcasts, they're understanding that there's like, yeah, this is great shooting with a crossbow, but man, go try to do it with a compound bow.
Yeah.
And then they'll make that kind of natural progression as
Yeah.
a deer hunter. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I was really impressed with
some people have.
Oh yeah.
there were a lot of people that came into the shop this year that was like, I'm not doing this anymore. It really wasn't for me,
Right.
Yeah,
because it's not the same thing.
It's not.
Like the level
No.
of skill that's required. Now, all that being said, again, if you want to crossbow hunt, God bless you. I hope you kill a big one,
Right.
yeah, we'll sell you one.
or a small one.
That's right.
Whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
If Alanis Morissette said it, I'm okay with it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't take away from the fact that it's more of a challenge to kill them with a vertical bow.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I know
I've
guys
never-
that
I
have,
never went to the woods with a crossbow, but I've worked on them. I've shot them, and I've even had maybe people tell me it was just harder to cock.
And even some of those aren't.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but I mean, just time consuming and cumbersome. That once they're in the position, they're a string gun.
Yep.
You know, that shoots subsonic.
I'm not going to say
and
that
they're pushing that if they keep going.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know
not going
what
to
I
say
mean?
I'd never hunt with one, because if I get to the point where I just can't draw back a bow anymore, I'm still going to want to hunt during bow season.
Yeah.
And I know guys that are in that position, like they've got shoulder issues or whatever, and they hate it.
Yeah.
Like
I know, but
they have to use a crossbow.
I don't want to make you guys out there mad, but do you think, what's the low limit?
30.
Is it 30?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
They turn it down to,
a couple of these guys are like,
think they could?
they're thinking about switching hands. Like instead of shooting right-handed, moving to trying to shoot a left-handed bow, just so they can go back to compound
spend 30
hunting.
pounds of energy, eating a piece of watermelon, probably.
Yeah. But then you're talking,
the right piece. The right piece.
right? Yeah. Guys don't want to give up.
And I'm not hating on anybody.
Right.
I'm not hating.
If you're shooting 30 pounds,
if your
like you're
shoulder's
saying,
blown out and you can't do it. You can't do it.
right?
Go crossbow hunting.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like those guys that have compound hunted, maybe if somebody's listening that's only ever crossbow hunted, the guys that have done it and have been relegated to crossbow hunting, by no choice of their own, hate it and they want to go back.
Yeah.
And they're trying to
I'll tell you
the
what
one
you
guy-
also run into with. I've talked to several people that are not as young as they used to be, and it's their eyes.
just call them old.
It's their eyes. They're like, I can't do the pins.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the peep sights, and
He's got a
and
dang magnifying glass on his peep
and
sight.
you can
Or on your, is it on your side or your peep?
It's on the side.
Yeah.
yeah.
Sherlock Holmes.
They also-
cheater.
Yeah, well, anyhow, but you can put a scope and that fixes the eye problem.
Yeah,
Scope
for sure.
on a crossbow, and then they're like, well, I can see good, and they're like, if it keeps me hunting,
Yeah.
So I'm not hating on anybody, and I hope you come to the place where you can lay that down and pick your bow back up.
Right. I've heard guys talk about
Yeah.
it'd be cool if it could just be an introductory weapon. Like if it's your first or second year hunting, you can use a crossbow. It'd be really hard to enforce that, though. I think the
I would
logistics
just
of it
like
would
to
have to be
see-
ironed out.
I would just like to see the state appear as though they care.
Exactly. Do something.
Yes.
One thing we talk about with a lot of guys, or I've had a lot of conversations, is like the mineral thing and the supplemental feeding.
Yeah.
Like all in the name of CWD, we can't use minerals or supplemental feeding, when in reality, we would probably have a healthier deer herd, even if some of them had CWD. That's not going to kill them before the natural habitat does anyway. If we feed them minerals, if they allowed us to give them minerals when they needed it and supplemental feeding when they needed it, I think they would be healthier overall.
There's a massive difference in CWD and what we see down here.
Yeah.
Like most of what we see down here is blue tongue.
Yeah. EHD.
Yep. It's not CWD.
Mm-hmm.
And how many cases have we even had in Illinois?
It's
like, I don't know that we've had a case.
I don't know if we've had any south of where the state gets really flat and there's not many trees, like in the middle part of the state, Springfield area. For whatever reason, it seems like it's all stayed up there. You know what I mean? Like the deer herd hasn't came down enough.
I know that up around, Wisconsin, they've had some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to my knowledge, in Illinois.
Right.
But here's my question. Did CWD mess up Wisconsin, or did them opening it up to where they were like, we're going to fence off a county and kill everything?
Yeah. Right.
So what really messed things up?
Mhm.
Was it man who was trying to manage it, or was it,
Yeah. And the studies they've done on it, they say if a deer gets EHD, they can live through it, right? And down south they have it every year. The deer grow immune to it, but it's really hard on them some years, right?
So
like
deer have immunity. Novel idea.
Who would have known? Natural immunity, right?
Natural immunity.
But the
don't
CWD,
take the vax. If there's a deer listening, don't do it.
Diplomatic immunity.
what they say is if they get it, it will kill them. However, most of the time it takes over the average lifespan of a deer to kill them anyway. Like they're going to probably die of natural causes, getting shot, getting hit by a car, getting eaten by coyotes, weather. They're going to die that before the CWD ever kills them anyway. And
I thought it's not a quick EHD can be a very quick
Yes,
killer.
EHD can kill 'em
kills them.
CWD
sometimes
in
days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard like some of them is like 10 hours it can put them down.
I would not doubt it. From the EHD,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty
So
gnarly.
CWD which is chronic wasting.
Yeah.
EHD is
Episodic
hemorrhagic
hemorrhage
disease. I don't.
yeah.
Whatever you said, the first word, we'll go with
Yeah.
that.
So it's conditions they get. So some people may not even know
Dr.
what that
Nate.
is. So CWD, chronic wasting. You're saying I don't guess I realized this, that it can possibly not kill them in their lifespan.
Right. Like they say, if they get it, if they live long enough, it will kill them.
Break out the mineral.
Right?
That's like,
Totally joking.
That's
like,
one of the
yeah.
biggest arguments
But
for
but
that.
see, I think that's where the state, if they would at least say, we're looking at these things, and this is like, I don't know.
Yeah.
To me, there needs to be something that they present to hunters to say, we're trying to make the herd better, and here's how.
Yeah, but it's like what Nate said. They'd rather sell an abundance of tags.
Yep.
But, and then what you're saying, in another 15 years, that could bite them in the tailbone.
Yeah.
But
Because they're like, now ain't nobody coming.
and,
But that's not the political
and when
way
I
to look at
say
things.
break out the mineral, a lot of people would hear he wants to hunt over that. To
Right.
me, it's I want to create a healthy
Yes.
deer herd,
And then hunt over it.
And then hunt deer.
then hunt the deer.
Right.
Yeah,
Like
I
I
know
don't
what
want to
you're
hunt
saying.
over it, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to create a scenario where my deer are healthy and should EHD, because they can live through EHD.
Yeah.
It's brutal, but
Yep.
they can make it through it.
Yep.
And if you've got a herd that is healthy and that is well taken care of,
Mm-hmm.
to me that's
Inoculated it.
I don't know
Need
if that's the right
inoculate
word.
the herd. Isn't that where you make them immune to? You put it in them to make them really?
We're
I
gonna
mean,
go with it. He's the medical guy.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Practically a doctor.
Didn't George Washington inoculate his? Didn't we talk about
I don't know. I think they get inoculated whenever I put an arrow through them.
Inoculate.
I inoculated that one.
Well,
Oh man,
maybe
guys,
I don't know.
this has been good. We've
Yeah.
had a lot of good discussion.
We- Covered a lot of stuff.
Why don't you real quick give us a rundown where guys might find you?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, you didn't even talk about the show.
Oh yeah. I'll mention that here.
Yes.
I talked about in high school I always wanted to make DVDs.
Yeah.
Well, still growing up watching TV, I always wanted to make a show. Even though when I told Nate when we started the podcast, man, I just want to do a podcast. I don't think I ever want to really try to do a show.
He lied.
Sometimes things change. Anyway, this year we did our first season of Fall Pursuit on YouTube, which
Yeah.
it's a semi-live, but I tried to make it a little bit somewhat more produced than some of the other semi-live series you see. So it's got a little more production value, hopefully, than some of them. But it's also week by week basis. So we did it like the hunts from, I think it was like Sunday to Sunday, and then those hunts would come out that Tuesday, whether we kill anything or not, whether we got it on camera or not. But we did that this year. So Fall Pursuit, that's on our YouTube channel, which is Ridge Hunter Outdoors.
Yeah.
We're on Facebook, Ridge Hunter Outdoors there, and Instagram. Those are the ones we use the most. We do put out videos on like some of the stuff we talked about, management stuff and strategy stuff as well on YouTube. The podcast is Ridge Hunter Outdoors. You get that wherever you get podcasts. Apple Podcasts and Spotify are the two big ones that everybody uses.
Yep.
It's also on the YouTube channel. And then our website is ridgehunteroutdoors.com, which is where you can find the scent. We just put out these hats today. So we do have a little bit of apparel on there. And
Sweet.
the podcast is on there. And then if you want any information on our consulting or management stuff too, that's on the website. So that's where people can
Awesome.
find us.
Great, guys.
Cool. Nate, I got a question. What's the number one thing that I could use to kill a big buck?
Oh,
Tool.
man.
Is it a
Tool?
Yeah, grunt call,
Oh, man.
rattling horns, smelly stuff.
he says Ridge Hunter sense.
And I was throwing you a curve there because you're like, well, you didn't get our scent. You
Yeah.
probably kill more big deer.
Yep.
For you personally,
Oh man.
is it just because strategy and you picked the right spot and that's how you kill them? Because I'm a manipulator.
Yeah.
I like to manipulate the deer.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing. And when I say that, I either want to sneak up on them, shoot them,
Mm-hmm.
decoy them in,
Yeah.
or sometimes all the above.
Manipulate them from alive to dead.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man. Gosh.
Because this is going to end the show, so it needs to be
No pressure.
Man.
tight. Let's change somebody's life here as a deer hunter.
I guess I'm gonna say the setup. I don't know.
You're literally people are quitting watching as you speak.
No. No,
I don't know.
well, when you say that, you're saying I take the time and I know the perfect spot and I set in. That's what gets my big deer.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
If
so.
people
That's
don't-
okay.
People may
I
not
don't
realize
know.
they should now a little bit, but this guy's a killer.
Oh, yeah,
Well, I
Yeah.
asked him because I
these guys
see
are
all the
killers.
pictures of the big deer.
This guy, and not that inches are everything, but 500 inches antler in the last 3 years.
Dude,
Yes.
nice job.
I mean, I'm just saying.
No, not quite. Surely not quite.
Not quite.
No, I mean,
4
between 4 and 5, we'll be modest.
Hey,
All right. I guess. Yeah. Yeah. I guess.
That's all I'm saying.
I had it.
Luck.
I had nearly 500 this year.
Man.
That's true.
It is true.
If you count your elk.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
Okay.
cheating.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm working with it.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, if nobody asks, nobody asks.
That's right.
I want to get 400 inches in one.
Yeah.
That'd be studly.
Yes.
One elk.
I have faith in you. I think you can.
Yeah, I think I know where one's at. I perked up when those guys said, "There's a 400-inch bull here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we can
We're
get
going
back,
back and we're going to rule the mountain.
I smote his ruin on the mountainside. No.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on. It's been a great episode, episode 8. Man, Ridge Hunter Outdoors, we appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having us on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Lathan, you got anything else for them?
I don't.
Guys, we appreciate it. Subscribe, like, do all the stuff that you're supposed to do. And just know that we appreciate you guys tuning in. So thanks for everybody and peace out.
Boy Scout.